Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make the Paisley Pixie earrings featuring the Czech glass Paisley Duo beads. Now these are actually really fun beads, and these are two of the finished projects that I have here. Now I've done them both in silver, and I wanted to do a fun little blue here and a nice dark teal. So these are two of the colors, but I do want to take a minute and show you the beautiful arrangement of colors that we have in the Paisley Duos, because this is going to be a really easy project for you to decide your own colorway. All right, so speaking of your own colorway, today I'm going to be using a little bit of a funky colorway, I'll say that, just so that you can really see it on camera here. So I have some of these beautiful pink Paisley Duo beads, and if you want to take a look really close, they have two holes, so they go through kind of sideways here. So they go through, one is there, and then the other is at the top there, and they sort of look like little commas. Now it's a very similar shape to, let's say, like a Zolly Duo, but the cool thing about the Paisley Duos is that they're actually flat on both sides, so you can flip them around and use them however you want. You can kind of back them up together, and we're going to nestle them together, as you can see in my little design there. So I'm going to be doing a circular brick stitch, so I have these little forms here, these little rings, and these are closed rings. These are beadable links here. I have a couple of little jump rings there. I have some earring hooks to use as well. Now the seed beads I'm going to be using this really bright turquoise, so that really shows up here for you, but these are Miyuki 11-0 rounds that we're going to be using here today. And then for my actual projects, I used the crystal FireLine, but today I'm going to be using the smoke so that it really shows up for you. But go ahead and choose whichever one coordinates with your project. Let's say you're going to do black beads or a darker color, you can try using the smoke. All right, so we're going to be using the 4-pound. Now the only other tools I'm going to need is I'm going to need a couple pairs of chain nose pliers just to help me out with that jump ring. I have my thread zap here. You can also use a pair of snips if you'd like. And then finally I have a size 12 beading needle, and I've already gone ahead and added about 4 feet or so of my smoke FireLine. All right, so if you have everything ready, let's get started. So I have my needle threaded, but I'm going to actually come to the other end of my thread here, take my beadable link, and I'm going to string that through, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie a couple of little overhand knots onto my link. There's one, and there's two. All right, and give it a nice little tug so we're nice and straight. Okay, now we're ready to begin our circular brick stitch. So how we're going to do that is we're going to now take our needle. I'm going to move some of my tools out of the way there. There we go. Take our needle, and I'm going to pick up 2 of our seed beads here. Now go ahead and slide those all the way down until they sit right on top there. And then what we're going to do is just kind of bend the thread so it's going to go backwards, and I'm going to take my needle through the center there. Now here's a little trick. Go ahead and hold those little beads right up at the top there. So go through the center with your needle. There we go. So what's going to happen is I've gone down and through, and now kind of scooching that up, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go back through the second bead that I strung, just like so. And pull that all the way through. And then they're going to come and they're going to sit right next to each other, just like so. Now don't worry if your first bead there is a little popped up. We're going to make sure that's nice and secure later, so just make sure you have a good tension, give it a little tug, and we're ready to add our next bead. So now, instead of adding 2, we're just going to add 1. So again, go ahead and sort of bring that all the way down and let it slide all the way down there. And what we want to do is we want to get it to sit next to it. So we're going to go through the center again, making sure to keep that bead on the back side there, and then we're going to go up through that bead, just like so, creating that little loop, and we're creating these little thread bridges that go from bead to bead, right on top there. All right, so let's do one more, and we're going to continue this all the way around, and you can see how I kind of hold the bead in the back there. You can kind of figure out whatever's comfortable for you. Go ahead and slide that up, go through, go back through, there we go. All right, so that is circular brick stitch, and we're going to do that all the way around the form, and I'm going to get to about there, and then I'm going to show you how to add that little extra bead, we're going to flatten that one, and then we're going to add the cascade with those Paisley Duo beads. So go ahead and continue to do your circular brick stitch like so all the way around. Okay, so I've gone all the way around with my circular brick stitch, and you get to about this point and you'll have to decide how big that gap is going to be if you're going to add 1 or 2 more beads. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the beads that we have here and a lot of the beads that you'll just find naturally have a little bit of change in size. So even though it looks nice and even, sometimes you'll be able to squeeze an extra bead in there, sometimes not. So I'm going to try one more bead here because I know I definitely need at least one. So doing the same thing, going around, going up through, and I think this is going to do it for me. Yep, just that one extra. Perfect. All right, so now I have my tail, which is still attached here, and I'm coming out this other side up here. So pretending that this bead on this side here is just going to act like another bead, I'm just going to bridge that and go down through the bead. And I want to shoot my needle going to the back side. And then I'm going to come up through the front just like we normally do. There we go. And I'm going to go up through the front side here. Perfect. And now you can see that it all sort of fits together and it went down, so it's going to be just fine. All right, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little bead at the top, which we're going to add our jump ring to. So go ahead and pick up a seed bead and go ahead and string that down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to string it down to the next bead there, and it's going to kind of pop up top just like so. Now I want to bring in our jump ring here because this is where you're going to want to test before you do any more sewing. So I'm going to take my jump ring. Now this is a 4mm 22 gauge jump ring, and it should fit really nicely inside that little seed bead that I just added there. But because not all seed beads are created equal, I just want to do a little test. There we go. So it's going to fit just fine. All right, so I'm going to set that down. But I just wanted to make sure before I added it, because especially when you're working with some of the more metal color beads, I noticed it a lot when I was working with the silver beads here, that sometimes they have a little extra coating in the center and you don't want to continue sewing if you're going to get caught later and that's not going to be able to fit that jump ring. Okay, so we're coming out that one bead there. Now this doesn't actually matter where you do this on your beading, but whatever bead you're coming out of, you're going to add a bead and you're going to go down into the next adjacent bead, just like so. And you can see that it's just going to sit right on top there. It's going to make a little triangle of 3 beads. Perfect. All right. So now we are getting ready to add our Paisley duos. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up through that next bead there. I'm not going underneath the frame at all, so it's just going to create a little tiny thread bridge that you can't even see between those 2 beads along the edge there. All right, so now that we're coming out of this bead, I'm going to bring in one of my examples because I want you to see how this is really going to work. Okay, so first of all, when you're looking at, actually let me do the one on the side. So when you're looking at this earring, you do notice that it will hang offset a little bit. So this is going to be your center line that's going to hang all the way down there. So that little hoop is not going to sit right in the center. It'll sit just a little off, and that's kind of part of the design. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add that line of the Paisley duos that's going all the way down. So what we want to focus on is making sure that we are coming out of wherever your top bead is there, you're coming out 2 over to one side. Does that make sense? Okay. So here we're going to go, and we're going to pick up one of our Paisley duos, and we want to go through one of the larger sides of it, going up through and stringing it down so that it sits just like so. All right, and then we're going to turn our thread around, and we're going to go through the smaller side, kind of bringing that together. But before we go down into our bead weaving, we're going to add another Paisley duo, and we're going to continue to go down through that large side. So I'm kind of keeping this on my table so that you can sort of see how everything is going to start to fit together. All right, so you see how we have our first 2. So we went up through the top and then down through this side. Now, when I go down into the bead weaving, I'm going to count. Let me just kind of push this aside there. So I'm going to count from the bead I'm coming out, 1 and then 2. And what I'm going to do is the thread bridge between the 3 and the 4 is what I'm going to hook under. So I'm going to go underneath that little thread bridge there, pull that up, and it's going to cinch up just like so. All right, so now I'm going to go back through just that first paisley. And again, just take your time, make sure everything stays nice and taut in there. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to turn my thread around with that paisley duo. Let me set it down again. I'm going to pick up another paisley duo going through that large side there. I'm keeping it just like so. And now again, the bead that I'm coming out of is in essence right there, going down over 2 thread bridges, being able to pull that up, and we are on track. So you just keep going, and we are going to add 5 beads just like this, in this manner here. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing here. Oop, let me get my tail out of the way and flipped over. There we go. All right, so again, going down into that bead, adding the large part of another paisley. And again, you can sort of see where that bead's coming out there, or if you look now, you can see between those 3. Actually, I want you guys to be able to see this. All right. So if you look through the 3 that I have there, it looks like I'm coming out of this one and I've skipped over that one. And I'm coming out of this one, but I'm really coming out of that little tiny thread bridge right there, but I'm skipped over that one. So it looks like I'm coming out of this one, so it's going to look, and I'm going to skip over and go through, because I want it to look like I'm coming out of that little bead right there. Does that make sense? I have a little knot there. Let me take care of that. Boop. There we go. All right. So, and then we go back up through, only through that paisley that we just added. And again, take your time, make sure everything is nice and tight. You can see me kind of just wiggling stuff, making sure it's going to stay nice and stiff there. Going down through another one. Picking up another paisley. All right, and same thing here. Kind of skipping over. Going underneath that little thread bridge there. And up through. Okay. So there are our first 5. So that's what's coming down all the way to the side there. So now things are going to get a little different. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back through as though we're adding another one. Come through there. Now what I want to do is I want to add a paisley, but in a little bit of a different format. So what I want to do is kind of flip it around so that I'm going through a paisley that's sort of facing down in the opposite direction. Okay, so we're going to go down through this way. And now what I want to do is flip that around and go through the bottom part. Oop, coming at it at a different angle. All right, there we go. Just needed to get it through there. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to do the same thing, and it's going to kind of drip down now like little droplets. So we're going to go through that little small side there. Let that sit just like so. And I'm going to string back through. And again, take your time. Go ahead and make sure everything is nice and tight. Give it a little tug as you go. Same thing. I'm going to go through. So now when you're looking at these little beads, they're just going to kind of like sit underneath each other. And string it back through. And I'm going to add one more on this side. Okay, just making sure that they're all nestled, and then go back through. and adding the final bead on this side, going through that small side there. All right, so instead of turning my thread around and going back down through, what we're going to do is we're going to actually pick up 3 of our seed beads here and let those slide all the way down. And I'm going to turn my thread around and I'm going to go all the way back through both of those paisley beads that are right there on top, just like so. Okay, and squinching that together. Again, this is where we want to really check that tension, make sure everybody is nice and taut. And we're going to pick up 3 more seed beads and we're going to go back through the other side. And this just kind of adds a little extra embellishment to that water droplet kind of feel that we have here. Pick up 3 more and go back through the next 2 paisleys. Make sure they line up nicely. There you go. And this is why working with the paisleys for this particular design is really nice, because you don't have to worry about them flipping over or having a certain side or anything like that. All right, and going through on the outside. And one final one here, we're going to pick up 3 more. And now what we're going to do is we're going to actually go through this first bead here and go up through, just connecting this little tail here that we have. There we go. So that's going to sit nicely in there. And then I'm going to sneak my needle underneath there, give myself a little knot so that it sits right in between those Paisley Duo beads. There we go. And then for extra security, if you want, you can go through and create another little thread bridge, because you already have one there, so don't worry about that. Go back through. And this is where I would tie my final knot here, just kind of going back through, looping around. Same kind of a process for tying off your thread for any other piece, and that knot sneaks right down there. Perfect. All right, so now I'm going to take my little thread zap off my little thread. There we go. And then really quickly, I'm just going to tie off my other little tail here. And you see I had plenty of thread, so that just gives you a little extra to work with. You work with less thread if you want. You can probably get away with working with maybe, I'd say, 2-3 feet. All right. So last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up through that bead, go over, tie a little knot, and go down. And I'm actually going to go down through the back side there so that I can zap off my thread on this side. Perfect. Always put your guide back on. There we go. And last but not least, our last little step here is we are going to string on our little jump ring and our earring hook. Now, if you're doing the right hand one, you'll put the earring hook on this way. If you're doing the left hand one, you'll put it on this way. So there's no change in the bead weaving from the left to the right earring. It's just how you put the earring hook on. So that is the only difference. So you can actually just repeat this process, but you don't have to worry about like, oh shoot, I have to do it all backwards now. Nope, not the case. All right, so that is the Paisley Pixie earrings. Of course, this is a really kind of fun color, and you can play with some different colors here. We have some fun little seed beads and some paisley beads, but I just love the way that it sort of hangs offset. It's just a really neat little piece there. So you can make this in all of the colors of the Paisley Duos, and you can see even more tutorials by heading over to Beadaholique.com. And if you're new here to our YouTube channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button below to get all the latest from Beadaholique.